like if I were to pick a side, I would come down on the side of doing something that you enjoy and that you feel aligns with what you care about, that you find meaningful, that you feel pulled toward. I think you're more likely to find fulfillment there, and you're more likely to be paid enough and have a fulfilling career than if you just pursue something because you can earn money, a lot of money making doing something. That road is tougher, where you're just doing it for the money. That is where I see people get burned out, where people are miserable, they are depressed, their family life is bad. Like that's where you start to run into some problems. And so I do think you need to have a minimum amount where you need to be able to get by, you need to be able to pay the bills. But after you get past a certain point, the incremental money is probably less important. Yeah.
So true. Thank you for sharing that. You said do something that you're good at. Okay, some of us have no idea what we're good at.
Hmm.
And we are getting to know ourselves, especially in the early ages of our lives,
Hmm.
you know? What would be your advice to somebody who has no idea and they want to discover what they are good at? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that this is a bit of a experiment that you've got to run on yourself in your life. I would try a lot of different things at first. And now you can't try everything, but are there a few things that, first of all, you think could be interesting and try it out? See if you're getting positive feedback, both if you feel like you're decent at it and you're also getting positive feedback from others. This is where actually some social feedback can be helpful. Sometimes I have people on my show and I'll ask them. Like I had a woman on my show who was she was a singer and Carla Strickler. She sang in Wicked, and she was one of the singers there. And she played. I think she was a stand-in for Elphaba, which is the witch. And I asked Carla Stickler, like, how did you know that you were good at singing? And she said, well, I started getting feedback from people that I was pretty decent at this, or somebody might be thinking about going into a career that involves a lot of like science or math or calculations. And you'll start to kind of get cues that, you know what, you're on paper, you're actually doing quite well at this compared to others. So this is where a little bit of social comparison can be a little bit helpful. And you can kind of get a sense of it. Sometimes people will make side comments to you about things like, hey, have you ever thought about, like, I mean, this happened to me. I was on a bus in Hawaii, and the bus driver who I saw every morning on my way to work, I was working at a financial services company. I was doing an internship at Northwestern Mutual Financial Network at the time. And he said, hey, have you ever thought about going into radio? I thought,
Way out of the
out of
blue?
nowhere, he just, a guy named Yama, who was my driver every morning. I was the first stop. I lived in Waikiki. He was taking me to downtown Honolulu. And one day he saw me reading the newspaper. And this was in the year 2000. This was during the election of Bush versus Gore. And he said, I noticed you read the newspaper every morning. And he said, I mean, this is back before phones existed. And he said, have you ever thought about going into the news or like doing news reading or like being on the radio? Or, and he said, because I like your voice. He said, you got a nice voice. And he said, you don't have a super strong accent. And actually here in Hawaii, it's nice if people don't have strong accents on the radio. I said, I've never thought about that before. But I remember somebody in college once told me, she's like, hey, have you thought about joining the radio station at Northwestern? Because she's like, you got a nice voice for radio. And I said, nope, no time for it. Pre-med. That's all I'm doing here. And I kind of,
Yes.
there are a couple things that popped up. So it's another thing. I've kind of gone on a tangent here, but if you hear things from people, if you notice patterns about what people say you're good at, that's a clue. You can take interest inventories. You can take like skills inventories. There's something called Strengths Finder, which can help a little bit. So that's another thing you can do. You can actually take inventories or career questionnaires. Strengths Finder is the one that comes to mind.
It's a very interesting thing I read a book once, Find Your Passion. I don't even recall, it was a long time ago. That there was an exercise actually that was for people who had no idea what they're, are here for, what their passions are. One of the exercises was you go out to the news station, one of these news station, and buy and just take a look at all the magazines that are sitting there. Whatever jumps out at you, just pick it up and bring it home and start flipping through the pages and see where you wanna stop and tear that page up.
Interesting. Okay.
And do all those and don't even think about it. Don't even second guess it.
Yeah.
Just flip through and take all those pictures out and put them like as a collage, if you
Mhm.
will, and see how many of which category you have the most.
Interesting. Yeah.
That is what you should be discovering in yourself
Yeah.
first, or this is just one idea. But some of us, we already know when as soon as we open our eyes, we already know what we wanna do. We
Yeah.
just get to it.
It's
But
interesting.
this was, I think, very interesting.
Yeah, I actually think another place you can look is childhood. So a lot of times when I was doing more one-on-one coaching, as we were working with like as I was working with clients to try to figure out what is it that I want to do instead. Generally speaking, we would land in a place that had something to do with their childhood. And they would say something like, "Oh yeah, like when I was a kid, I remember really enjoying this and a lot of people told me I was really good at that." But I didn't end up doing it because it like I don't know. I don't know why I didn't do it. I just didn't do it. And so childhood is a unique time because you're not quite at a place where you're not really concerned about what people think in society. Like you're not, if you want to be a fighter pilot, you want to be a fighter pilot. You want to be an astronaut, you want to be an astronaut. You want to be a ballerina. That's just what you want to do is just because you just like it. And so, um,
And you're not fully conditioned to think otherwise
right,
either,
right,
right?
right. So yeah, but figuring out your
Where
strengths
do
is
you
tough. Yeah.
think people right. Where do you think people confuse busy with fulfilled, being fulfilled? Does that make
Yeah, that makes
sense?
sense. Well, I think a lot of this happens and I see this in most of the speaking I do is at business schools. So I'll generally be speaking to people who are either doing their MBAs or executive MBAs. So these are people who are anywhere from, I don't know, call it 10 to 25 years into their careers. And they are busy people. And I see people all the time who are really busy. And I think that, especially in our society today, you can kind of mistake busyness for, yeah, fulfillment. And that's just not, that's just not the case. I actually think it's a myth that people who are busy are somehow like more important or they are more productive or they're more successful. But I do think there's a strong perception of that out there. I had another guy on my show named Michael McAvoy. He's based in Pasadena, and he was an attorney, and he was working at his family's law firm, his father's law firm. He ended up becoming a public adjuster and founding his own firm. But he took a break from work for a while, and he said when he walked down the street, like he would like run into people, and they would say like, "So what? Like, what are you doing? Like, are you?" He said, "I'm just going for a walk," and they say, "Okay, okay," and but he was really happy at that moment, and so I do feel like we are almost conditioned as a society to pursue work because we feel like it looks good on paper or that it gives us a fancy job title or we're working at a big name company. Fill in the blank big name company, Procter and Gamble, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, McKinsey. It it feels good to say that I think, work at a company like that, but I do think it's worth taking a good hard look in the mirror and asking yourself if you are truly happy with what you do, if you're truly proud of what you do, if what you do really excites you. And um, yeah, and it's not just about work; it's about the rest of your life.
about the rest of your life. What do you think defines a successful career without external validation or applause?
Well, if I think about like the whole purpose of a career, generally, it's about I suppose it's about professional. I mean, it's very circular, but when you think about your career versus the rest of your life, so if you think about the rest of your life being, I don't know, personal development, family, physical fitness, spirituality, there might be other things there too. But your professional life is about your, I guess it's about your contribution out there. It's about what you're making some sort of a contribution professionally to the world. And I think that's why people want to have careers. But there's also all sorts of other things about careers, which is about your own personal enrichment, your own development, your feeling that you are making a difference out there, and your ability to exercise your skills in a way that's productive and meaningful. So so ultimately, I think when it comes to having a successful career, it's when you can it's actually kind of simple. Like it's like, do you feel happy with your job? Like, are you are you doing work that you feel is aligned with who you are and what role you want to play professionally in this world that allows you to leave the legacy that you want? And what I don't think it is I don't think it's about money. I don't think it's about status. I think it's about you being able to I said simple, and that's not very simple. I think it's basically about you being able to do the things that you want to do,
Yes.
which is essentially wealth, right? Like if you think about like people they'll go into a career because I guess at a superficial level, we're trying to earn money. You're trying to build up wealth in your life. What is wealth? Wealth is essentially what you want to have more of in life. And so
Yes.
typically we look at things like financial wealth or material assets. But there's also lifestyle wealth. There's like the ability to spend time with people I love, the ability to control my schedule, having the autonomy to make my own decisions, doing work that I actually care about, that I'm proud of, being able to spend my days doing things that I find exciting. Like that is also wealth. And so I think that's what it comes down to, just being able to do the things that you want to do.
Do you think this notion of time is real or it's fear in disguise? Because some of us were like, the time is not right. It's not the right time. I'm not ready.
Hmm.
When the time is right, I make the first move. What is this time that we keep repeating that stop us from taking action?
Yep. And this again, this goes back to a little bit of the left brain logical protective. Let me kind of steer clear of danger thinking, which makes a lot of sense. Like that's kind of our animalistic. These are our origins to keep ourselves safe. And so I think that when it comes to thinking about what you want to do next, it's just important to realize that there's never going to be a perfect time to move on. There will literally never be a perfect time. There will always be reasons why you should not make a career change. I can guarantee you. like, uh, so you should know. I think it's actually a myth that there is the right time to make a career change. I do think there are better times to make a career change, but I don't think that there's not like an ideal time. But there are times where it's a little bit better to make a career change, and I think it's important to recognize that there will never be a perfect time. There are a lot of good enough times. And so, okay, should I have left the Clorox company when I did right before I got promoted to brand manager? Probably not ideal from a professional standpoint, but do I want to keep my then girlfriend, now wife, who is based in London in a long distance relationship indefinitely? That's probably not a good idea either. And so I'm going to make a move right now. When I left the corporate world, I just gotten married. Do I really want to introduce financial uncertainty into our life when I'm just now kind of settling down? Probably not the best time, but also not the worst time. We didn't have a kid yet. It wasn't that bad of a time. So same thing with medical school. Okay, I was leaving 2 weeks. Is it premature? Like, should I give this a little bit more time? Well, at that time, it was I could get my deposit back and somebody else could take my spot. So if I can do that within 2 weeks, then I'll do it in 2 weeks, and that's why I left in 2 weeks. So, but I do think that it's very easy to kind of do well, once I do this, once I do that, and my feeling is, and I've always felt this from a very early age, is that life is very fragile, and you never know, like, if there's gonna be a better time.
Because even if nothing is happening in your personal life, something will eventually happen out in the world anyway. So there is always something happening, as we might experience right
Yeah.
now with all the chaos happening around
Yeah,
us. There is no perfect time. You just have to do it,
kind of.
you know,
Yeah, you just have to go for it.
and see what happens. Speaking of moving, can we talk about your move to London?
Yeah. W
So what happened?
so I was in well, I was in business school, and I was doing my MBA at the University of Michigan. My then well, at the time, I didn't know her at all, but my then girlfriend was doing her PhD in London, and I was visiting my sister in Istanbul, where she was working, and my wife was visiting her brother in Istanbul at the time. My wife's Turkish. We crossed paths in an airport, and then I handed her a note on the airplane because we didn't end up sitting next to each other, and then um, that's not quite the story. We didn't end up sitting next to each other, so I handed her a note in the Heathrow Airport after we deplaned because I had to catch a flight back to the US, and I caught up to her in Heathrow, gave her a note, figured I'd never see her again. And then, like, a week later, she wrote, and then we kind of yeah, we started writing. And this was before it's just before, like, this is back in the days of Skype, and but we never spoke, and then we ended up meeting up in London, and then the rest is kinda history. I took a trip out to Europe.
Oh my god, this is a love story.
Right. So that happened.
This is one of those movies
Kind of,
that you see in the movie, right?
kind of, yeah. But then
This is so lovely.
yeah, and then we met up, and then I finished out business school, and then I moved to San Francisco to work. It was a job offer I couldn't turn down, and then we were long distance. So she was in 8 hours, away in time zones and in London, and I was in San Francisco, and then at some point, this is about, like, 2 years into my job at Clorox, which I really liked my job at Clorox. I thought it was great. I loved the people there. I loved my manager. Learned a ton there. Was on a good trajectory. And she kinda told me, "Well, somebody's gotta move here." And just due to visa restrictions, she wasn't in a position to move to the US. I could, at the time, move to the UK without restriction with my US passport. That's changed now. So I decided to be the one to move, and that's how that happened. But it was tough because my parents were in Sacramento. This was the perfect setup for us, uh, only being, I don't know, about an hour train ride away from them. I'd always wanted to live in California, always wanted to work in the Bay Area. This was right when things were taking off in the Bay Area, so it was hard to leave.
What did you learn from that move personally?
Well,
What what kind of a, let me put it this way. What kind of a growth and shift happened um, on an emotional level, let's put it this way, personally for you?
the biggest thing that changed for me was that my preconceived notions of how I thought my life should look, were not necessarily the only narrative for my life. Like, I really thought that I was gonna be in California for a very long time, like, for years, maybe decades, and that's where I was gonna settle down, and that is what I really genuinely thought that. And I actually genuinely thought that was going to be the best outcome from all this stuff. You know, like, I dropped out of medical school. Okay, now I'm in San Francisco. Everything's worked out. Sunny California. Good job. Good colleagues. Good company. But I started to also notice I wasn't super thrilled marketing drain opener for a living. I was working for Liquid Plumber at the time, and there were things that bugged me about the corporate environment. And so I moved out to London, and initially I was actually quite resentful of what happened because I ended up working in desserts, which I was marketing desserts for a living, and I wasn't really thrilled about that for all sorts of reasons, just because it was kind of misaligned with, I mean, here's somebody who used to want to become a doctor, and now I'm marketing desserts, and that just kind of felt really strange to me. And I was marketing ice cream, and that felt kind of almost wrong to me. And so,
Mhm.
I guess what I learned was that you just never quite know how things are going to turn out, and that things take time to settle a little bit. Like it took about 5 years before I really embraced life in the UK, and I kinda wish I would've embraced it a little bit earlier. I think it would've been less painful. I think there would've been less suffering if I had just kind of embraced the idea of change earlier.
How one can embrace the idea of change? How do you put it in practical way term?
It pro
Because sometimes it's really
Yeah, it's
hard.
tough.
Change, like adaptation to change and new environment or new thing, it's very hard. Some of us are wired and actually are very excited about change.
Mhm.
We're like, yes, change, let's do this.
Yeah,
But some of us are like terrified.
yeah,
You can be frozen in the time, in the moment, and in your body even.
yeah. How do you embrace
So
change?
practically, how do you embrace it?
So this is where I think it is. I actually think it's hard to embrace change unless something is a little bit off, because I do think change is hard, and change is uncertain, and change feels risky, and change feels unsettling. So most people won't embrace change, me included, unless I've got a good reason to change things. And typically that reason is driven by me not being able to fulfill something that's important to me. And I suppose recognizing that unless I open myself up to change, I'm just going to be stuck on this like mind numbing path the rest of my life. And so I think part of it is just understanding that if you don't change, then y- y- your only other option is to be okay tolerating your career indefinitely. And if you can realize that that's probably not where you want to land, just like tolerating your day to day life, that recognition of that and acknowledging that that is not acceptable to me is what allows you to be open to change. But you've got to first of all almost declare to yourself that you deserve more and that you want more and that you're willing to kind of fight for more. I've just found that that doesn't typically, like, people don't typically have the motivation or the impetus to do that until something goes kind of wrong um, in their career. They don't feel compelled to do it. They'll just carry on. They'll just deal with it. It's not, yeah.